Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Up here on the third chain and on Belding Reef on the back side of it here, we've got finally starting to get a little bit of water to come back into our system, thank goodness. It's been so low for so long, so there's lots of areas that's kind of haven't really lent itself for you to be able to fish. Wading wise, it's been pretty good. We've had hit or miss days over the last few days, but the new moon that we just got through, we're on the back side of now. We're heading into our transition days, our wild card days. Has been pretty good, pretty consistent, but specifically around the bite. It's been around the major or it's been around the minor, at least for throwing artificials anyway. From my standpoint, that's when the majority of our bites or opportunities have come, is around those time frames. So up here on Belding, on the inside of this, now we have a little bit of last couple of days that we've had some water come back, which has been very beneficial. Again, bait's not an issue whatsoever. We got tons of bait that's in our system. A lot of competition for throwing artificial baits. So you really must make your baits stand out in and amongst all the live bait that's in there. Makes a little bit things more difficult. I mentioned a few weeks ago when we started July that July and August are the two toughest months for people that throw artificial baits 99.99% of the time, which is myself, and there's a few others that are out there that do that. And so these are days that we've got another 4 weeks that we got to be able to withstand, and hopefully we'll get just a little bit cooler weather that'll come in here somehow, maybe some rain or something to that effect. We really need it for our system because our salinity levels have gotten so high. It's also contributed to the bites or lack thereof bites or opportunities during our time frames. Whether you're in Belding, whether you're on second chain, doesn't matter if you're up on Panther Point or down in East Flats or wherever you're at, the salinity level is high everywhere. We just need some rain to offset that because there's a delicate balance with our salinity levels that affects our fishing and our catching ability. But that said, we're still able to find some. We're still able to catch. We're still catching bunches and bunches of undersized trout. Get up in here on the inside of Belding with the amount of bait that's in here and just working your plastics. The main thing that we've been throwing is the Supermodel in Twisted Tea, Supernatural, Texas Roach, Salt Sassy has been good, all in Supermodels. Of course, the original version in Twisted Tea and the White Ice has been pretty good for the most part. The Marker 54 Jerk Shrimp has been pretty good for the most part. Mirror Lure, Little Johns have been good in the Watermelon Red and Chicken with a little bit of chartreuse that's under. Again, I'm not a big chartreuse guy, but there are moments when that's opportunity in there that you really need to have a little bit of that to bring that bait alive so those fish can locate that. But that said, all this area up in here with the amount of shell that's in here, this water temp has been just a little bit cooler than most places. We're seeing average temps in the 88s to 89 to start the day. Some areas we're seeing in the 90s to start the day. And then when you have the sun that's going to be high above us throughout the process of the day, in some of these areas you're getting into 92, 93 degree water temp that really turns these fish off from not really wanting to eat a whole lot. So when you see that or you're in that type of area when that water temp is that warm, try to locate some water that's a little bit cooler. Find you a cut through, like coming through Dunham or Rattlesnake or one of those points there. You got a little freshwater ICW water that's coming through there, coming around that point there. The shale lends itself to be good. Hard-packed sand on a protected shoreline tends to be just a tad bit cooler. Temperature, just like we talk about in the wintertime, being a big factor. In the summertime, it's just as much a factor. Those fish want to be comfortable just like we are. They're looking for that area where they can find their bait, they can find their structure. The water temperature is comfortable for them, good enough anyway for this time of year. But work with these areas here. Pay attention to what your tides are doing, the winds, and all that kind of good stuff that's working up in here. Again, we're moving into the wild card days, transition days, headed toward a full moon. The new moon bite frame was pretty good for us, so we want to hopefully we can continue that on through these transition days and continue to locate fish. Again, work your bait. See what your winds are doing. Pay attention to what your tides are doing. If you can, that tides really start to drop out, look for your deeper guts to find a little bit cooler water or some water that's running through a pinch point, some type of point itself, a gap, a gut. channel, a drop, an edge, any of that kind of stuff, that's where you're going to locate these fish up underneath your bait and working these baits in those particular areas. Up here on the front side of Mud Island, man, you got all different types of grass beds in here. You got hard packed sand. You got some scattered shell that's in here. You got areas that lend itself for these fish to want to hang out here. You got tremendous amount of baits. You got cut throughs, little guts, little swells, depressions, drop offs, edges. All that kind of stuff is exactly the kind of stuff that we're wanting to look for, especially with the water temps being where they are, starting out in the upper 80s, 88, 89, 90 in some of these areas. It's just ridiculous. So we want to be able to get into some areas where that water temp is cooler for these fish. They want to be comfortable as much as possible. They don't like it hot, just like we are. We don't like it hot. But when they find that cooler water and you've got other stuff that works for you, you've got the structure that's there, you've got bait that's in there, it lends itself to give you opportunities to catch fish. Now, the one thing that needs to be said in here, we've caught lots of trout here, some scattered redfish ever so often, pulled a flounder or two off here or there, not too often, but there are some there. The amount of trout that we're catching, but my gosh, they're all in that 12 to 15 to 16 inch range. Next year's fish will be in pretty good shape, providing that they continue to live throughout the rest of this summer and winter and into next spring. But we're finding, that we're catching maybe 8 to 15 smaller, undersized fish before you stick a decent fish in that 17 to 23 mark. If you want to have just a good catching time and just go catch some fish, this is a great area for you to go fish it. Again, you'll pull out some fish in here if you stick with it, if you stay patient with it. Biggest thing here is, it's protected from the windward, from that southeast shoreline when we have on that leeward side of the island there, so it stays protected for the most part. You got deeper grass beds. These fish like to hang out around that kind of stuff. You got guts that are up here. If you fish down this way, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And as you continue on down to Blind Pass, toward the Bass Place, all this shoreline here, it all lends itself to give you opportunities because the amount of bait that's working up and down the shoreline, there's going to be predator fish that are around them. It's just a matter of finding the right predator fish that are in there. Down south, Twisted Tea, white ice in the original size has been really good. Again, the Twisted Tea has been really good for a long time now. For a couple of months, it's been working that particular color in the water here in Aransas, and then up in the Mesquite area in Copano. It's all been pretty good colors for this water level here and what we have. Another bait that's become high on my list is called a Knockin tail lure. Some of you may be familiar with it. It has become part of my box as well, especially for my clients. It's a very easy bait to use, very effective bait. It's got a nice size paddle to it. It's got the beads that are in the tail itself. It is a bait that if you do not have or have not heard of it, you want to check that out at your local tackle store here in the area. They do carry those at a couple of the bigger ones that are here over in Corpus and in Rockport, so you may want to check those out. Knockin tail lures. They have a variety of colors. You can go on their website as well, but it's a great bait. Very easy to use, very effective. So tough fishing days, put one of those on there. The colors we've been using there mainly have been in the white color, like a pearl or a white ice color, if you will, has been most effective. Watermelon red in that as well has been pretty effective. Depending on the clarity of your water, you may want to find you a more translucent bait. And of course, one of the translucent bait that we've been finding with the down south has been the Dirty Tequila, has been good. In the Mirror Lure Little John has been the Golden Red Glitter, and the Kitchen Sink has been really good. Those particular baits, when that bite begins to kind of taper off on the back side of that minor, which we, like I said, during the new moon phase, we had some really good bite frames, but you could tell when the bite was starting to taper, and the fish catching was starting to go away with that. So we'd put those Little Johns on and kind of continue and push that out as far as we could, and we could stretch that bite frame just a little bit more because it's really erratic in moving bait. And that's the same thing with the Knockin tail will do for you too. It gives you a little bit extra with the noise and the vibration and the color pattern that they have with those particular baits. But anyway, working these particular areas, working your deeper grass beds, working your sandbars, working your guts, that's where we're locating and finding some fish up and down the shoreline here at Mud Island. Swan Lake Shoreline, again, one of my favorite areas to fish, either inside or outside. Now, this is one of the areas when you get on the inside of that, especially right now, You know, it's got a lot of mud that's in there, and you got some good grass that's in there. But man, that particular area right now, if you're going to fish it, you better fish it early in the morning because that water temp starts rising up really quick. It gets super hot in that area. So, I mean, we're talking 88, 89 to begin the day. And that sun gets about 2 hours, 3 hours into rising. We're already over 90, 91, 92 back there in Swan Lake. So that sucker gets hot. You can hang in there with it if you want to. There's, like I say, there's plenty of bait working all back up there on that back shoreline. You can throw a topwater in there. If you can get there early, like, you know, if you can be on that particular shoreline, say by 6 o'clock when it's still somewhat dark, and throw a topwater on there, you're going to have a pretty successful morning. There's been some active redfish that have been working back there. A few scattered trout in there as well. But once that sunshine starts popping up there and it starts getting a little brighter, that bite goes away. So what we've been doing is either we've tied on a double D and throwing that back there on that back shoreline or out in the middle, depending on what our tide's like. We'll say we've had just a little bit of water come back here in the last couple of days. Finally starting to rise up just a little bit. We're not on the negative side anymore, so it's been nice to have a little extra water here, so that's helped. Some more will be helpful. Hopefully, as we transition toward a full moon, we will begin to see a little bit more water to fly back into our systems. But that said, work the if you don't want to get back there in Swan and work that area there where it's a little warmer, get out on the front. Get out here on the shoreline where the drop is. We've been throwing 16th ounce jig heads, been throwing the supermodel out there, especially during the new moon phase, primarily during the bite frames has been the main target of what we've done. The supernatural has been good. Twisted Tea has been really good. White ice, salt sassy, all those in pure colors, no chartreuse whatsoever on those tails. Now we get into the as the bite frame kind of starts to tinker out there, we start to throw the burner shad or the original size. Depending on how many people we have in the party, we'll have somebody have on 3 different profile sizes and see which one's the most productive during that time frame and have everybody switch over. So again, the supermodel during the bite frames back here have been good. Then we've downsized to the originals and the burners and continued the production with our fish catching. Now they've tapered out. Sure, they spread out, the bite frames have, but they're there. The majors and minors have been good. Continue to focus on your majors and minors during those time frames. Our tide frame, you know, that tide's going to be a little later through here, so you get some movement through these guts that come off of the backside of Swan Lake into Copano, or vice versa from Copano into Swan. You can do pretty well. Again, as the day goes on, work the deeper edges, work the deeper water. Those fish, they start moving out to deeper water to stay comfortable. Come around to this point as you head down toward Port Bay. You can get off on this edge. It's got a nice little drop to it there and just work that. And if that's where you need to put on a 1/8 ounce or 3/16 or maybe even a 1/4 ounce jig head to get that bait down there in that 5 to 6 to 7 foot of water, then that's fine. Do so. Work this whole edge all the way down toward Grass Island and that point down there. A lot of structure that's in there, a lot of bait working in there. Grind on it. Just be patient with it. Like I say, we're catching lots of fish that are in that 12, 13, 14, 15-inch size frame. But a little bit more so back in here, you know, we're sticking one that's, you know, 17 and a half, 18, a little bit more consistent pace back in this way. Redfish, scattered back up on the shorelines, especially as you go back into Port Bay, back in that area there. They're cruising and working up and down that bait line and working those edges in the drop-offs. So make sure you concentrate on those. Again, you can throw a topwater back in this area as well, but I would throw that topwater super early in the morning and then take it off as that sun gets to rise. But again, supermodels, original size, down south. The Knockin tail lures as well has been very productive in this back area here. Marker 54 jerk shrimp has been really good, just bouncing that off the bottom. You can put it up underneath the popping cork, whatever you're comfortable with. But they're all producing. They're all catching fish, and it's just a matter of how many fish you have to go through small size to get your right size, or even a decent mid slot or a little bit lower slot redfish. But they're back in here, so just continue to work these. Again, as we transition into our transition days and our wild card days, remember to have a little bit of everything in your box as we get into those time frames.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.